Hey, Jamie and Gabe, I appreciate you joining us for one of our sessions of the Cognitive Brain. And bottom line is we're looking to build and strengthen our critical assets here, and that's our human talent. And our instructors are key to our mission success. I'm going to live that to the best of my ability, and one of the ways is bringing in leadership from a C3 risk and insurance. And you guys have obviously, as an apple and oranges discussion with what we do in the Marine Corps. But when it comes to leadership and the way you've designed your business for success, there are some things in there that I think we can pull away. So with that, Jamie or Gabe, I'll hand it over to you for your introductions.
First of all, thanks for having us. I think Lieutenant Colonel Zaccano, built us up a little bit, but we're just maybe has us here because we're just average guys who started a company and are living the American dream, really as a result of all of your service and sacrifice. So we're really able to do what we do because of you. So first of all, I want to thank you, and obviously we're humbled to be here. Lieutenant Colonel asked us to kind of give a little bit of background on, how we, live this American dream and got to a place where we started our own company and have been successful at it. So I'll give you a little bit of background on me, and then Jamie's going to give his background, and then lead into a little bit about what we've done, in the private sector. I was born in Travis Air Force. I'm in Fairfield, California. I'm on a farm, and I'm a son of I'm an Air Force brat. My father did 20 years in the Air Force and flew in Vietnam several tours, and we ended up in Fairfield because he was flying the C-5, which you guys probably know a little bit about, but he would say that he lived the Cush force, which was the Air Force. So although I had a pretty modest upbringing, the son of five siblings, my father always talked about how we're really rich in kids, and I think this idea of being rich and in family and being brought up in that American dream really has stuck with me. So as I grew up and went to college, I studied in St. Louis at Washington University. I studied finance and international business, and then I also studied at Hebrew University and Middle Eastern Studies. And that's where in St. Louis is where I got my first job. My main goal was to work abroad. I wanted to experience, another country in the work world and see what it was like, really to learn more about the U.S. And I didn't realize that at the time, but I got IBM Global Services came to my campus. They were only hiring MBAs, and I was an undergrad. But I just showed up at the interview, and I was sitting outside the door, and the hiring manager came out after interviewing somebody and said, "Who are you?" And I told him my name, and he said, "I don't have you on the list." And I said, "Hey, I'm not on the list. You're only looking at MBAs, but I think you want to interview me." And that's, about an hour in, I got offered my first job. And that just kind of, that kind of moves into this kind of this lesson of that I learned as, young, that something that I don't have to teach any of you about is about grit and just the resolve to go get it done. And that's just a small example of when it feels like it's, you don't qualify, just showing up and letting them know that you feel like you do. A lot of times works out in the private sector. And I'm sure that you guys could teach me a lot about how that works in the military. So, to shorten the story, I got transferred out to Paris for 2.5 years after working for IBM in the U.S. So we got to, experience Europe and travel and work there, which was something that was kind of eye-opening on really understanding how different countries in Europe do business. And that really helped me understand better how we do business in America. And so when I came back in 2004, I joined an insurance agency up in Northern California. And then in 2007, I joined up with Jamie at an agency under another umbrella, that insurance agency under another umbrella that I worked at for about 10 years. And Jamie together and I partnered up and started our own insurance agency in 2017. So I went from working for IBM to the sexy business of insurance.
It is sexy.
Jamie,
let me tell you.
Do you want to give a little bit of your background, and then we can talk about how we kind of created the agency of the future?
Sure. If you think Gabe's background sexy, wait till I knock your socks off. But first, I echo Gabe's sentiments, and we do the same sort of things. We look to bring military leaders and personnel into our organization and have talks, because there are a lot of similarities to leadership, preparation, planning, goal setting, etc. So I think there's a lot of transferability when an organization is setting itself up for excellence. My background, my dad is still a truck driver in Missouri, and I kind of came up through, I guess, humble means, you could say. I went to, probably, Gabe hates me saying this, but probably the worst college in the universe. We have a mule as a mascot, and I don't know how it gets worse than that. Only to say that I then got a safety degree from the college that has a mule as a mascot, and started my career in OSHA type environment. But it was intentional, and sort of with the same thought process of why we ended up in insurance. Is back 20 years ago when I got my degree, everybody who was in safety was a white male that could barely put a sentence together. And so I went in to get that degree because it was underserved by people who could come in and be a leader and, navigate that quickly to rise to the top. And they had pretty high starting salaries. So for me, it was a no-brainer to go. I could go into other competitive fields where people smarter than me, better looking than me, quick thinkers were already competing. Or I could just go into this other field where none of those people were hanging out and navigate that system quickly. So that's what I did. I worked in safety, which has a close correlation to insurance. Ended up, heading up the safety division for a construction company that built power plants and refineries all over the world. And we self-insured those largely. And so I got my hands, first on, it's our dollars when somebody, cuts a leg off or somebody dies. And that was our exposure to insurance. And then I got recruited to an insurer where I worked every aspect of the back of the house. And my philosophy was, learn a discipline and move. So learn risk control, learn underwriting, learn claims, and kind of get to that 70 to 80% saturation where you're like, okay, I know this position pretty darn well. I don't want to know it at 100%. I want to know it at 70 or 80%, so that if I meet somebody else in that profession on the street, they might not know I don't do that full time anymore. I have the credibility and the skill set. I can assimilate with somebody who's in it when I move on, and then move on, because the 70 or 80% it takes a year or two to getting to 100% takes a lifetime. But with that perspective, you can move quickly. And so along those ways, what I saw in the insurance world was if I stayed with an insurance company, I was either going to work at an office, 8 to 10 hours a day. If I wanted to make big money, it would take me 40 years to get to be a vice president and travel all over the world and not be home with my family. Or I could become a broker. And becoming a broker, brokers make the most money. But it's also the biggest barrier to entry because there's not financial support. So you have to be willing to leave all the money you're making and start with nothing and literally go out and hard transact and close specific sales deals to create revenue. And so I decided that's what I wanted. Constantly swim in the direction of everyone else or swim upstream and go into that world. And as soon as I did, I got beat up pretty good. It wasn't easy to do. But once I spent enough time, failed enough, it was the same kind of thing as going into safety. Believe it or not, most kids in 6th grade didn't write down that they want to be an insurance broker. As shocking as that may sound, most of them either wanted to be an athlete, a doctor. If somebody did write down they wanted to be sales, it was probably a medical device or something else that's more glamorous. And so once again, we're in a field where we're competing against people that if we put good systems together, we can go out and conquer it. So that's what Gabe and I did. He alluded to in 2017, we started our brokerage, and really it was out of opportunity. Big national companies came in and bought up all the middle market agencies that we competed against. And so now you have all national houses that are managed from different locations. People in New York managing San Diego and Orange County locations, and that's never going to last long. We're in a stagnant industry that lacks technology, lacks forward thinking, lacks just having fun. That's why Gabe made me put a bar in our office, was just so that if people didn't find Gabe and I fun, they could go to the bar and create their own fun.
Everyone's head kind of perked up when you said bar, Jamie.
I know. I think I heard somebody back there give a little fist bump or something. But that's what we did. We mapped out what the industry looked like and wrote a very specific game plan on where we thought deficiencies were that we could attract talent. Most of that game planning came around freedom. In our industry, people sort of like a dog, all the support teams are chained to a desk. Even the salespeople had old school computers and an office they went to. And so back in 2017, we set up a modern agency. If I take my background screen off, you can see it's polished concrete floors, it's glass walls, there's a bar, there's 40 Sonos speakers that play throughout the place. But all of our teams have laptops. They can flex out. They don't have to ask us if they can work from home. Anyone, 100 people in our organization can just not come to the office, and they could work from home that day. And then they have core work hours at 10 to 3, but they can flex around work to fit their schedule in a way that it's more like work is molding around their life rather than the other way around of how it used to be that you had to get everything done that you needed done around your work hours. And so creating an environment like that, we felt would help us attract the best people out there that wanted to be with forward thinkers and couple that with technology. And so that's what we did when we started the company, and it's accelerated quite a bit. We've grown by 100% almost every single year. And through COVID and the coronavirus crisis, we've had the best 4 months of our company's history and are just exploding. And so we didn't intentionally think that a pandemic was coming, but through forward thinking and freedom of movement and how we get our business done, that crisis actually helped us. And so with the thought process of creating a business like that would help attract people, COVID just accelerated it. And so it's been very, very friendly to our business model and gotten us to the goals that we set even quicker than we thought we would. And so I think just the last thing I'll talk about and then I can turn it back over to Gabe or Julian if we want to open it up to questions, is kind of how we accomplish these things. We do a couple of things. First of all, we screen people heavily, just like you guys do. So we screen on personalities and backgrounds. There's a pretty regimented interview process. We need a culture fit, first of all. If they don't fit our culture, it's definitely a no-go. And then it also has to be a fit into the position. So we do personality screening, whether they're going to be in some sort of service position or support position, very different than how we screen for somebody who's going to be in a sales position, or they need to be a little bit more of a bulldog and aggressive personality. And so there's a barrier there to be able to enter our company, because the amount of resource that gets sucked out of you if you bring the wrong people onto your team is significant. So we do a lot of screening up front to try to get that right. You know, you're not going to nail it 100% of the time, but we try to cut that down as much as we can. And then from there, it's kind of the Walt Disney saying, you know, if you can dream it, you can do it. So we start with goal setting. Goals are incredibly important, and because then you can reverse engineer what the process looks like to get to the goal. So we start in people's personal lives. You know, if it's a younger person who's coming into us, we might say, hey, you're 25. Like, what do you want in life? You know, do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? Are you going to have a house on the ocean, or is it going to be in Temecula? Like, what are these costs going to look like? And then from there, you can actually help them personally build together what their financial life needs to look like. And you say, okay, that sounds great. And here's the time frame to do it. And we've built an algorithm just in an Excel spreadsheet that says, okay, to have the lifestyle that you're dreaming of and to retire by the age that you want, you have to make X amount of dollars per year for X number of years. So to get to that, let's back into it. Your average commission size is going to be this, which means you need to bring on X number of accounts. What that equates to is you can't mess around. Like, you got to get your ass out there and you got to transact accounts. So let's talk about what it takes to bring on $100,000 in commission or $200,000 in commission every year. That takes a tremendous amount of work. And so then we break that workload down into expectations of how much revenue that they're constantly prospecting and what their prospect ratios are going to look like to create that outcome. That's all the setup, right? Is you have to know where you're wanting to go, have a goal, have an objective. And if you haven't structured that, it's really hard to get the outcome that you're looking for, right? So you start around that goal setting and planning, and then you need an infrastructure to accomplish that. And so that's the next thing, is we have a very specific system we take them through, that if you do these steps each month, which is an engagement cycle with specific targets, over the course of a year, X number of those targets are going to convert through your sales funnel into a client process. And it's almost foolproof. If you plan your work, you work your plan, you have your objectives, and you're working with the right tools, you'll get the outcomes that you wanted. And so that's, in a nutshell, how our sales team is structured. And then I would just say from a leadership perspective, we probably ask somebody every day, like, what do you need? How can I help you? Like, what's stopping you from accomplishing that goal today? And so that's kind of, if we just set our leadership style in a sentence, that's it. And what we found is that's a good recipe for success.
All right, I'll ask the first question here, Jamie or Gabe, to either one. But given that you guys operate a company and you have a wide ranging of personalities within your employee base, how do you create conditions where your employees, in our case, our junior Marines would be the scenario, but how do you create a work environment where your employees can come and talk to you? How do you set those kind of conditions? And there's some ways we do it in the Marine Corps where we have like command philosophy, and the commander gets out there, kind of get in front of the Marines or the staff sergeant or the sergeant. But what's Jamie and Gabe's methodology to this?
I mean, I'll start it. I think it's a lot has to do with, setting the right culture and tone. One of the things that we talk about is, we have the C3 family, which, it's more than just talk. We're, as leaders, we're asking a lot of questions, and then listening. And I think listening is a big piece of it, is understanding that way we understand what their needs are. And then we can act on it. And so when they see that we act on things that they need, then that creates trust. And then they're more comfortable coming to us and when they need something else, to help them do their job or, move up or excel at what they do. So I think just creating that right atmosphere, and as a leader, listening and really trying to, figure out what they need. I had a small example yesterday where, and this is really small, where one of our people were having trouble invoicing invoicing in our computer system, and that was causing a big issue with accounting because it happened to be a big deal, and so there was the salesperson was upset because they weren't getting paid. The insurance company was going to cancel the policy because they weren't getting paid, and so something that small was causing a big issue. So I called her and I just asked her, what was causing her not to be able to do it correctly, and in the end she said, well, with working from home and COVID, normally I print out all my invoices and I lay it out on the table, and that's how I use my comparison. And because I'm working from home now, I can't do that. And I said, okay, well, let's get you a printer. And she was just something that simple. She was so appreciative. So we're sending her a printer, and I think that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah, I'd add to it and say that accessibility is a big part of it. If you saw our office, our offices are out front and they're all glass, which was intentionally done because we want to be accessible to everybody. And it's more than just a physical environment creates that. It's really people have to be accessible. So I think having an open door policy that anybody feels comfortable coming in and engaging you on any issue is a really important thing. And if you could create that kind of transparency and ability to communicate with each other, then you're going to achieve that.
Thanks. Questions from the crowd?
Gentlemen, first of all, thank y'all for your time. The question I have, y'all talk about the flexibility. So as we done morphed into this COVID mindset and given the staff even more flexibility, I like the way you all describe, hey, take your laptops, go do whatever you need to do. But has that come back to hurt you? Have you seen that to hurt you in any way? Has it been a deterrent or any negatives to that flexibility? So,
Jamie, is it okay if I start?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say I love taking naps at home during the middle of the day. But
we do have a meditation room in our office, and sometimes we find Jamie go in there and we don't see him for 8 hours. But
your moment there, buddy.
Now with technology, we have a system where we can really tell what people's work product and their activities are, and so we can tell based on their emails, their number of times in the system, so we can actually gauge how many basically how many hours they're working a day, and so that we don't, it's a little bit of a big brother, but when all we have to do is we sit one person down and go through it. And the word gets out that we are keeping track. And so people in general, if you have the right people, they're not going to take advantage.
I think it's a great question, though. We didn't have that. We didn't have that ability 3 years ago to do what Gabe just said. When we were a 22-person company, we struggled with that because Gabe and I don't have that skill set. So as we grew, there was this point in time where we had to make a decision to bring, another high-level management person onto our team that financially stressed the hell out of Gabe and I. And Gabe, quite frankly, wasn't ready to make that financial investment. And we did, though, because we knew to continue to grow, we had those issues that had to be addressed, and we didn't have the skill set. So we had to go find the right person with that skill set, who understood the tech. There's a technology requirement to putting that together, and then there's a management piece to it, right? Of having the capability of looking at information. We don't big brother it. If there's an obvious problem that arises, the problem comes to us, and then we go look at the information. We don't actively manage a dashboard of that information. So it's a philosophy of if the output is what we want, we never look at that stuff. If the output is not, then there's a process to engage. And like Gabe said, once you call that in one time, everybody's kind of like, hey, don't screw this up. Like, we like being able to do laundry while we're on a conference call. Like, don't mess it up. And then that's more our client team. So we have service teams, right, that are more traditional office people. On the sales side of things, it's a totally different story. We don't have metrics like that we look at. What we do is we've set goals with them. So we're not beating those people up. We're saying, hey, you said you wanted to drive a Mercedes, or you said you wanted to be able to buy a house this year. Your output is not equaling that. What's going on with you? How can I help? What do you need? And that's kind of how we manage that side of it. Those are good questions.
From the audience.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you for your time. I do appreciate you guys are sharing a lot of knowledge with us and stuff I'm definitely writing down and hopefully use in the future. I do have a question in regards to, you talked about gathering talent and screening them. How do you deal with talent that begins to struggle during whether they're in sales or in service, and how to take that talent struggling and then build it and make it stronger, not only for yourself, but for that individual?
Go ahead.
So you mean when we have talent that's not performing? Is that the question?
Yeah, whether it's a personal problem that they're dealing with, or just for some reason they're just not, they usually perform well, and they're going through a slump. How do you get them back on track?
Yeah. Well, I mean, COVID definitely has exposed some of that with some of our people. Some of it has to do with, they may have had, previous challenges that really come to light, from a mental perspective during COVID, because it's very isolating. One of the things that we had somebody where we just where they've, we asked everyone to work from home, but some people really felt like they needed to go into an office every day for their mental health. And so we accommodated that and allowed them to come in. And so we're just looking for ways to accommodate them. There's some people that, their kids can't go to school. They don't have daycare because of COVID. So their kids are, running around while they're working and, jumping up and down and screaming during conference calls. And that's obviously not ideal. But it's the situation that we're in, and we really look to accommodate that, and help them get through it. I guess people that are struggling from on the sales side, a lot of it is just coming down, sitting down and asking a lot of questions on where they're struggling and why they're struggling. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's just there's simple solutions, but somebody just needs to ask them. Instead of being frustrated as a leader, we could come in and say, you're screwing up. You better go and correct it. Or, hey, another way to say it is, how can we help you? What's going on that I see you're struggling here. What is it? And a lot of times they can solve their own issue when you just talk through it.
Yeah, I would add, Gabe kind of touched on it there, but our style in just about everything we do, whether it's selling a product or working through an issue with personnel, it's questioning. We don't play our hand before we know as much information as possible. Gabe is just genuinely nice, so I think he asks because he cares. And I'm a little bit more strategic, and I like to win. But both of us, and I care too, don't get me wrong, I was half joking. But both of us approach it from a place of, we don't want to just dive into something and start speaking and providing solutions or recommendations when we don't know as much as we can. And it's even on the sales side. We've taken brokers out, like, I don't even understand what happened. You guys didn't sell anything. Like, no, we just asked a million questions. And at the end of the day, said sign here, and we left and didn't even talk about insurance. Questioning and having as much information as possible before you make a decision of how to address the situation is huge. Reconnaissance, you guys might call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times your initial reaction, or your they call it system 1 and system 2. And your system 1 is your first reaction to something, and often it's wrong. And so just having that pause and waiting and getting information, you can wait for a better decision based on the situation.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, some more questions from the audience? Anything else? I got another question for you. So one of the struggles that we have as leaders is that sometimes, just a caveat off of Kevin Gonzalez's question, sometimes you come to a point where your organization is going through some kind of crisis, whatever it may be. And in your case, maybe you lost an important client, or something else has kind of happened where it's impacting the bottom line. And how do you convene like your crisis action team, or how do you convene the team, and how do you go from there, from the point of failure to your roadmap to success? So in our own organization, we're a very wide team here. We have a lot of different schools, and something may happen in one instructor population or in one corner of the organization. It doesn't require me or someone else, but how do you go from crisis and then move it on?
Well, I'll start on this one, I guess. I think a couple key things for us. One, we champion failure, right? You don't get better by success. You get there through failures. So if you beat everybody up for failing, it's really hard to learn what's happening in those moments. So we really champion it. We try not to overly emphasize the failure or the outcome of it. It's more the input that went into what created that outcome, right? So you're wanting to learn from a series of decisions or processes that led to that ultimate outcome that wasn't desired. And the way we get there, one of our core values is divergent thinking. So if the people that are directly involved in that line made the wrong decisions, they may or may not be the ones that can help you think differently about how to create a different outcome than what you got. So a big part of our process, a lot of it is pre-planning, right? When we do any kind of planning or evaluating, we want people that are almost just completely in left field, and we seek advice of, people like you who have no relation to what we're trying to achieve, to take a look at it and see if there's something that you catch that we missed. So I think those are the two kind of things. Like, let's not beat people up. We're all on the same team. We're trying to go somewhere, but we don't want that outcome again. So we've got to learn from it. So just a positive outlook on it, and then bringing a group of people together who see things from different perspective and listening to that perspective, I think are probably the two key elements that come to mind. Gabe?
Well, I mean, I think that, this idea of talking it through with getting different perspectives is super important. I know for myself, when I realized that when we're going through a crisis and I stop sleeping and I kind of keep it all within me, bottled up and not really talking about it, that's where, that stress really affects you. And so what helps relieve that is really getting together and making a plan and realizing that the plan has to be adapted, as but you're going to follow through and that we're going to come out, better on the other side. And so when COVID hit, we didn't know, how that was going to affect our business and how much. And at first we were a little bit reactionary, and then we took a step back. We realized that that was a mistake, and we took a step back and really put together a good plan and decided that we're going to be aggressive and we're going to take advantage of the fact that all of our competition is putting their head in the sand, and they're paralyzed. And so now we can really go out and compete and win business and grow and offset our loss in revenue as a result of COVID. And then we really just, when we had the plan, we just rallied our troops, but rallied the employees together and said, hey, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and we're really depending on you to help us fulfill it, and that you're going to be critical in that to make it happen, and kind of talk to them about what their role is. And obviously everybody's worried about their jobs. Are they going to keep their jobs? So everybody was motivated to produce and come through because, for their own self-motivation, but also for the group.
Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting situation. Obviously, COVID has thrown a lot of curveballs, and for our own organization, like many other companies throughout the world, we don't know where all this ends. And the only thing we can do, and especially in crisis, is like you said, just come up with a plan and then begin to execute based off, and then have the freedom of movement in order to kind of pivot to all the little brick walls that just kind of pop up out of nowhere that are unforeseen. Right now we're looking at certain states are looking at reclosing their economies again, and so that has impacted us with Marines moving in, Marines being able to move out. We've got families that their kids don't have daycare or even possible school to go to, and so the other challenge we have is our Marines work extremely long hours, and as you guys well know, and that presents another challenge into the system. So that's a point taken, and that's something I know our companies or organizations or sub-organizations are looking at, is how do we best take care of our Marines, especially our instructor population.
How are you doing that?
So there's a couple of challenges for us. One, that we have a lot of people that are telling us what to do, and so that kind of information changes on almost a weekly basis, as I'm sure you guys are realizing on your own side. What the city of San Diego does and what the state of California does, and what other kind of government influence has on your business. It's kind of magnified for us in that we have our own leadership has varying ideas as to how to manage this situation. So the challenge for me, at least, is to allow enough flexibility so as to allow every possible scenario that each one of our Marines and their families are facing, to not allow enough flexibility that leadership at the various levels between me and the youngest sergeant in our group, or even younger, has the ability to that his or his own problem can be managed at the smallest level possible. And I put out recently a commander's guidance, and one of my things in there is a one-pager. I've asked our leaders, between me and the youngest Marine, to execute his or her authority to the extent possible. I don't want to be so dictatorial to set a standard or a policy that doesn't meet every scenario, because I could take a step back and trust that the leadership between me and the youngest Marine can manage the situation at his or her lowest level. Because Julian Sicano, commander of the MARDET, can set a standard that is so unwieldy, so imprecise, that it will cause harm across the force. Maybe solves 51% of the problem, but 49% are now struggling under some act. Now, there's some instances where I have to do that, and usually those are like immediate response to an immediate problem. I can't allow that problem to fester and the results kind of be damned a little bit. But in the case of COVID, in case of the families, I'm going to defer to the leadership at the subordinate levels. There is some like left and right lateral limits, as we call them. You got to stay on the shoulder of the road. As in this case, where we can't stay 6 feet, we got to wear a mask. We got to follow CDC guidelines and expect all of our students to do the same. But I'm not under any illusion that I could solve every problem. And I think the moment that happens, we've got an even bigger problem. And so I look at the leadership below, the platoon, the company, and even the section to help bring solutions to their own localized problems. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Well, I think that kind of leads into the idea of empowerment, right? Empowering your people to make decisions. And leadership, really stems from social influence and not, authority and power. And so that's really something that we can learn from you and how you, push out that authority and that empowerment.
Any other questions?
So, anybody else? So, gentlemen, you all talk about talent management, and that's here for the instructors. That's a big thing for us, getting the right talent to make sure we're teaching the next generation of Marines. So, I found it interesting that you all talked about the interview process. And with the depth of your organization, are you two still involved in the interview process? And if so, how much? Because I received that you all are involved in every interview, and to me, with the depth of your organization, that seems taxing, where you can't focus on the up and out and allow somebody to focus on the down and in. So if you could elaborate on that.
I would say typically Jamie or myself will have met every employee before they were hired.
Every employee. There's a case where that's not the situation.
I think it's really a big part of, how we set the tone in our culture, that I don't know if it's sustainable forever. But so far we just find a way that one of us, meets them before we, before they're hired.
Yeah, I think
it's more for a process of making them feel, because we do trust our, the people that are interviewing and that come and say, hey, we want this person. But I think it's more to do like one last stamp on culture, and then also make them feel like, hey, leadership is there to to be there, when they need it as an organization.
Yeah, Gabe's right. It depends on the role. I'm more involved on sales production side of it. So and Gabe runs operations. So on that side of it, he's definitely seeing everybody. But it's more about they're already being screened by other people, right? We have a full-time recruiter and a COO who frequently have already interviewed those people, and we're the last step. And usually we're not being brought in to say yay or nay. We're being brought in to sell the culture to them before they come here, so that it's set up properly and we're getting what we want. But it wouldn't be practical for the president of the United States to interview every Marine before he joined forces, right? So there is a scale issue there, but to the extent possible, the work done on the front end of it is 1/10 of the work done when you have a mismatch on the backside of it. And we live in a state that is, by political standards, very, very liberal, and it empowers employees to assert control in ways that many other states don't. So in California, the consequence of bringing on the wrong personnel is exponential here. And so it is a very important thing that even if we aren't interviewing people 3 years from now, if we're 200, 300, 500 employees, we'll still really want a tight process to try to prevent bad apples.
You guys got any other questions? Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so it's me again, gentlemen. So accessibility, I like your whole mindset on the accessibility thing. But I'm gonna take this person. My staff kind of get on me a lot because they're like, "Hey, sir, you're too accessible to the staff. We need you that break in case of emergency." But I don't feel like with my personality, I'm out. I'm amongst everyone. I come up through the ranks. Have you seen when the accessibility has hurt your organization or hurt the morale somewhere in your organization?
Are you saying being too accessible?
Yes, too accessible and stifle that middle management, so to speak.
Yeah, there is it's a really interesting question, and I think we have had situations where somebody on the front line might not have got an outcome they desired in the middle, and so then they come to the top. And I'm not sure if that is what you're saying.
Exactly the situation.
Yeah, I don't know if Gabe and I just have a golden rule on that or not, but I would say we wouldn't change our accessibility as a result of that situation having occurred. And I don't really know the answer to how to make it right or not. It has happened on more than one occasion, and we've managed our way through that process probably the best we can, but we encourage a lot of dialogue between those people. We want them to come to us and talk about those situations. And then I think we're more listening and encouraging them to go ask their set of questions back wherever the problem, as opposed to us jumping in and superseding rank.
It kind of reminds me of, being a parent, and you have, your kids fighting and they come to you to as a referee to solve it. And then all of a sudden you become a referee all the time. And a lot of what the best way is for them to solve their problems with each other and, learn conflict management. So what, in that example, what a lot of times kind of what Jamie said is that we may give some advice but push back and not jump in to solve the issue for them. But to push back and say, hey, this is something that you could probably, solve on your own. Have you gone and talked to so-and-so? And then that kind of pushes them back into, I don't want to say the proper channels, but a way for them to realize that they can solve their problems on their own and they don't need to, jump up and get you to come in to referee or solve their problems for them, and then create resentment with levels below. So,
I'd say one more thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but a good friend of ours, and Julian knows him as well, Wayne Partello, was talking to us, counseling us through something the other day, and there's an organizational alignment issue as well. So everybody has to be aligned in the organization with the same goals, right? So if the job of each person in that management or line of command, if their job is to help the frontline person accomplish their job and everybody's aligned to that, then sometimes you do need to hear from the front line. Is that person above them supporting their cause and trying to remove roadblocks or not? Because if that's not their mindset, then they're not aligned with the organization, right? And so there could be an issue there that does need to be addressed. And what Wayne said was when there's that misalignment where somebody in the middle is not of the mindset of how do I help that person accomplish their goals and their job, what that person's going to do is one of two things. One that Gabe alluded to, which is they're not getting what they want from mom, they go to dad, or vice versa. Or two, they create a mutiny. Like they're going to take the path of least resistance to try to do their job. And if they're not getting the support they want, they're going to do one of those two things. And neither of those things you want to have happen in your organization. So sometimes it could be an opportunity for you to evaluate if everybody in the line of command is organizationally aligned, or is there work to be done there? I don't know if that helps you, but.
Oh, perfect. Spot on. Thank you.
We got about 5 more minutes. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I'll ask the kind of last question unless we got any other comments from the room. Okay, so one of the things I've noticed about your own company, and it's almost an impossibility in the Marine Corps, but there is a culture of like running your business like a startup, and that's in many ways it's kind of like the culture I've noticed from your own company, having been over there a number of times, and you guys basically run it like a startup. That's just the way it feels. Not in the bad sense, but in the good sense, in that there is so much possibility. And your employees feel like there is possibility. You guys espouse possibility, whether you talk about it directly or not. Almost nothing is off the table in many ways. You're accessible and much more than any other company I've ever seen, especially in the internal culture. And is that something deliberate, or do you guys kind of strive to make that happen by some other way, or how do you get that kind of culture going?
Well, I mean, I think it's deliberate, and it kind of goes to what you were saying about pushing out authority to the lowest level in your organization, and you're already doing that. That's what creates an entrepreneurial spirit, is that where people feel like they have the authority to move up and or the empowerment to move up and to grow and to come up with creative ideas that can really help the organization move forward. And so it's about listening and empowering your people to do more than what they're currently doing, even more than their job. And so I think that's just part of the culture that we try to foster.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you're talking about the word hope, and yeah, you're a part of a bureaucratic, behemoth, right? You can't change what that is to make it a nimble startup feel like how we can, but you can create hope by the empowerment Gabe is talking about. And I think through that organizational alignment of having a specific role in a greater mission, if they're empowered and they understand what the outcome is going to be, and they understand they have a role that brings value, then I think that's how you accomplish that in your organization.
All right. Awesome. Hey guys, I appreciate your time, and Gabe and Jamie. I know you guys are busy, and appreciate you supporting this get together that we've had. And this is part of our kind of at least my plan is to again bring in people from different fields, different walks of life, and who have achieved some degree of success, and kind of teach me ultimately. I'm learning something, and I'm under again no illusion that I have all the answers, and to at least look in the look from your desk, your problems, and the way you've gone at solving them. Given how complex and bureaucratic our own organization is, I have to be willing to entertain all number of possible scenarios. And if I pull something from you, from the corporate world, or something from someone else, whether they have been doing this for a year or 50, I could really care less where I get it from. But again, I appreciate you guys and your time, and I'll leave it up to you for any closing comments.
Well, first of all, congratulations again on your baby. How's the baby doing?
Oh, doing awesome. She's doing great. Keeping us up.
Yeah, you look very relaxed.
Good looking, because somehow that thing came out cute.
Yeah.
Definitely looks like his wife. But no, we obviously are humbled that you invited us, and we appreciate your time, and really thank you for your service and sacrifice and all that you do to allow us to really live this American dream. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, anytime any of you are ready to go to the civilian world, we're ready to take defectors. We're growing, so come on our way.
All right. Okay, we're going to
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, and then we've recorded it, and then we'll share it with you guys, and then we'll post it. So we'll go from there. Hey, thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Jim.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Bye.